Welcome back. Hour 2 of the Charlie Kirk Show. I'm Andrew Colvett, executive producer of this fine show. Joined as always, well, not as always, you've been traveling a bit lately, Blake Neff, one of the producers here, as well as Rob Henderson, author of Troubled and Substack writer of Rob Henderson's newsletter. Correct? Yep. Did I get that right?
Yep, that's right, Andrew.
All right. So, Rob, I'm so glad you're here for multiple reasons. I'll just say the top two right now. You were Charlie's last long-form interview.
Yeah,
which is a I don't even know how that makes you feel. I don't know how it makes me feel, but it's
just tell us
noteworthy. And
tell us about meeting Charlie. I don't think you'd met him before you came in.
Yeah, that's right. No, I told him, I think when I first shook his hand and then when we parted ways, that it was an honor to meet him. And no, it was just a surreal moment when I learned that I was his last long-form interview. Because some time had passed between our discussion and then what had happened later, and I presumed he's an extremely busy guy, but I learned the same day as everyone else. Oh, this was his last long form, and then I felt this internal, I don't know what it was, this grieving, all of the feelings of that day came back of meeting him, knowing him, and then realizing that was the last long discussion that he'd had, and it made me think of how he was during that interview, as he is in all interviews, inquisitive, curious, sharp, thoughtful. I'd been interviewed by a lot of different people, and one thing that stood out to me is how sharp he was. I would reference a study or a book, and I would see him writing things down. He would ask follow-up questions, and he asked me questions that I'd never been asked before in other interviews, and I could see, it's different to see it, like everyone else on YouTube and the podcast. He's a great interviewer, but then to see him at work in person was just amazing. He was such a professional.
Yeah, and I'm so glad it was. I'm not glad it was his last interview. It was a good topic for this final interview because it was hitting on some of the stuff that mattered most to him, not just in an immediate politics sense, but the really big picture things. Erica said in her speech at the memorial that if Charlie had entered politics, his biggest goal would be revive the American family. And we talked a lot about
the family,
the state of the family, the success sequence, what the impact is that we don't have intact families in America anymore, and what could conceivably bring those back.
Absolutely.
Those are the really enduring issues he cared a lot about.
Well, and that's a multi-pronged issue, right? There's an economic front, there's a values front, there's a faith front, there's a policy front, obviously, and you are sort of famous because you coined this term luxury beliefs, right? And I remember you guys' interview, I actually watched it happen live over they connected me, so I was watching it on a Zoom feed, and I think it's really key that you're here today. And I remember Blake was like, hey, he's going to be in town, we should have him back in, and it's going to be the day after Mamdani likely becomes the next mayor or gets elected to become the next mayor of New York City. So when you pair some of the writing and the thinking and the work that you've done on luxury beliefs, and you think about that in relation to Mamdani just getting elected in New York City, he is the living embodiment of what it means to have a luxury belief, I think, in some ways. Or you could argue the opposite, right? Like his supporters are going to argue the opposite.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I had spoken about with Charlie was, I'd written multiple pieces expressing my concerns about the possible election of Mamdani. And in one of those pieces, I said, this is, think about the most obnoxious person you could possibly run into at an Ivy League Hamas encampment. And, what should come to mind is someone like Mamdani. Like, that is the person. And he, at that time, he was about to be elected, and now he is going to be the mayor. And yeah, it was alarming, and he is the luxury beliefs candidate. Socialism has always appealed to highly educated people, and he is unapologetic about it. And a lot of his ideas, globalize the intifada, city-run grocery stores, free public transport, a lot of, these ideas are just empirically going to make things worse. But in his mind and in the mind of a lot of his supporters who are so disconnected from reality, they've just decided to go this route, luxury beliefs, which I define as ideas and opinions that confer status on the credentialed and the affluent while inflicting costs on the lower classes. And a core feature of a luxury belief is that the believer is sheltered from the consequences of his or her beliefs. And of course, Mamdani is, kind of an archetype of this type of person because he was raised by a filmmaker and an Ivy League professor. He went to Bowdoin, which, his alma mater has more students from families in the top 1% of the income scale than the entire bottom 60%. He spent his whole life cocooned in affluence, and now he's positioning himself as a man of the people, a man of the working class. But that was not the demographic that came out for him. The exit polling showed that, when you break down the results by education level, 57% of college graduates came out for Mamdani versus only 38% of working class, non-college educated voters.
So one thing you might have some insight on, do you think it is a sort of cocooned elite that is voting for him? Because another argument people have made is, yeah, they're higher on the income scale, but they're also the very precarious high income ones where maybe they make a six-figure income, but they also can't afford a flat in New York. They can't live the way they probably lived growing up in suburbia with their parents. And so they feel very downwardly mobile, even if they're in the upper half or upper fifth of New York's incomes.
Yeah, and I've been posting about this too, that obviously, Mamdani did not win the working class, and people have countered by saying, maybe they have college degrees and they're comfortable, but they don't see a path onto owning a house or something along those lines. And I just think it's important to point out that there is a very strong difference between actual poverty versus the kind of genteel poverty of a young person, a young college-educated person in New York. Because, yes, maybe at the moment they're struggling, but they have options. They don't have to live there. They have a degree. They have contacts. They have cultural capital. They have options in a way that a blue-collar working-class person in New York City doesn't. And so they're not in the same boat. People will say, oh, well, yeah, I have a degree, but I'm still working class. Like, that's not how sociologists would define class.
Yeah, let's put up 305. This is which best describes your education. So Mamdani got 39% of never attended college. If you go all the way up to advanced degree, he got 57% of bachelor degree and 57% of advanced degree.
Yep,
so he is essentially, but here's what's interesting. I mean, he's pushing forward tax hikes for whiter and wealthier neighborhoods. But even Kathy Hochul saying he's not going to be able to get these things done. But he's promising free stuff. This is free stuff populism.
Yeah.
You could call it socialism. We could quibble on terms, but essentially this is a left-wing populist candidate, right? What is it about these people that do not that they don't seem to make the connection that he's going to cost them? Is it just basically I want to help the lower class and this is how I'm going to do it? Like, what's the motivation behind people that he's actually going to target? His policies are going to hurt, but they're voting for him.
Right. Well, I think what's going on here is that people never consider themselves a member of the elite or the upper class. It's always the people who are ahead of them. Those are the people who are going to be taxed or who are going to have to pay excess penalties, and they themselves will be sort of safeguarded from this. Sometimes I'll talk about if you track Bernie Sanders' speeches over the last 10 years, back in 2015 during the Democratic primaries, he would always talk about the millionaires and the billionaires and the millionaire class and the billionaire class. And then you go through 2017, 2019, and now he just talks about billionaires because at some point in the last 10 years he became a millionaire and now he exempted himself. And now, no, the millionaires are going to be safe, but now we're just going to go after the billionaires. If your family, your dad is worth $100 million, he's going to be protected because he doesn't have $1 billion.
Yeah. Fascinating.
It does feel there's something different and we might have to go into the next segment with this, but it feels like there's something a little bit different with Mamdani versus Bernie Sanders' socialism of 2016 or 2020. And I think it's what comes up when people describe him as kind of having this third worldist edge, which partly that's just that he is of immigrant origin. But I think maybe you can weigh in on this. There's something to the idea that he represents this attitude that does want to punish the West, sort of. Like there's almost this attitude of wanting to lay low, like historic, the wealthier, whiter neighborhoods, as it were.
Yeah,
it's like a grievance, some sort of grievance that goes into this.
This is a full mask-off moment where he's laying bare the actual motivations of we could call it DSA or the communists, and he's not hiding from it. We're going to blow the brakes for the stream. Stay right there.